When there is this awakening, it's this deep seeing that who you are is not a thing, no thing, appearing as everything, and that it's conscious of itself, that it knows itself. You can't say necessarily that consciousness is the source, but consciousness is the method in which this mysterious force is knowing itself. This thing, this no thing, is experiencing itself as everything. So consciousness is the nearest to the source, like consciousness is the way, is what it's producing or creating to know itself. So consciousness is the connection to that source, and it's what is happening in every human life form, is that there is consciousness. You never switch consciousness off. It's not like you wake up in the morning and you're like, I'm awake, let me switch consciousness on, because you can't switch it on, because how would you even know you're doing that if you're not conscious? So when I say consciousness, I'm not talking about something like Freud or Jung would talk about the subconscious and the conscious mind. I would call that personal awareness, and then the unconscious or the subconscious. But I'm talking about big consciousness. I'm talking about if you get a whack over your head and pass out, then it's lights out and consciousness is aware of nothing, or consciousness knows nothing. So when you're asleep, it seems like there's no consciousness, but it's actually that consciousness is at rest. And then lights come back on again, and first thing that happens when you wake up in the morning is consciousness comes in, and then you don't sit there and think, oh, let me switch my consciousness on. It's the birthright. It's the birthright of all beings to know, to experience. It's really magical. It's wonderful, that magic of knowing, not knowing something in time. What happens in the human form, though, is we identify with the intellect, and we identify with the thinking mind, and we divide ourselves. We begin to imagine ourselves as a body, as a form, as an age, as a color, as a nationality, and we begin to think that is who we are, and we hold it inside our head as if that's who we are. But how could that be who you are? That's something that's not there all the time, but yet consciousness is there all the time. It's the first thing that has to come in. This consciousness comes in when you wake up in the morning, and then the memory of the you comes in. But there's always this identification with an image of self, and this creates a lot of emotional distress in the person because you're living a lie. That's not who you are. So there can be this awakening, and that there's like an energetic shift back to this emptiness. And it's energetic, it's like an expansion, because consciousness is actually everywhere. It's not in here. We imagine that consciousness is behind our head or inside our head or behind the eyes and belongs to us, but actually consciousness is everywhere. It's not located in here. It's the same with that sense of being, that sense of aliveness. It's not located in the body. It is everywhere. It's everything. And that consciousness can look from multiple angles, because it's universal, and it's not located somewhere. It's not it doesn't have a brain, and it's not linear, it's not in time, so it can look from multiple angles, and it doesn't have a brain, so it can't think, oh, I'm looking through Lisa now, and then I'm going to look through Jerry, because that's a human thing to think about these things. Consciousness is looking innocently, and it's all intelligence, it is everything, so it can look from multiple angles and receive that information and know that information. But the human can't remember that, and the human can't know that, so to the human that's abstract. Things only happen in logic, in cause and effect, and in time, and in this linear timeline. So the imagination that or the idea that the reality is multi-dimensional, and but it's all one energy experiencing through multiples, through many. If you think of it like a bag, so if we had like a paper bag here and we poked lots of holes in it, and then I put a light inside, it's one light, but it's looking through many. And that's the same as the essence, but the essence actually isn't consciousness. The essence is mystery. Consciousness is the first thing that comes into play in order to experience itself. So it needs consciousness in order to be there to be life. And in order for there to be consciousness, there needs to be something to be conscious of, otherwise nothing's happening. So it's like one comes with the other. But there can be this energetic shift where that is seen and your essence isn't located in the body anymore, your essence is everywhere. And then there is this body that's moving around in who you are. So this vessel is moving in who you are. And your essence doesn't have any motivation. So often when people wake up, they don't have motivation to do things because they're so identified with, or that they've had such an explosive awakening, there's such an expansion that they can't feel the body, or they don't feel the impulses in the body properly. And sometimes it can take a period of time for the impulses in the body to come back, because you need to, in order for something to happen, you need to have an impulse. Like we can say it's nobody acting, but the way that nobody acts through this body is through the movement towards pleasure. So it has an impulse to do something, it has a desire to do something. So a desire to eat, or a desire to drink tea, or a desire to go for a walk, or a desire to do whatever it needs to do.